Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Today is Wednesday, April 13th, and we are going to start with a do now. So make sure that you open the attached assignment on Google Classroom, your personal doc. You have that open and you're ready to type in your do now. So the do now for today is, what is the chemical compound in marijuana called that gets people, quote, high? And what does this chemical do to the brain? Now, this was in our assignment on Monday. So if you're unsure, you can go back to the assignment on Monday and check it out. So take about a minute, answer this question on your own. Pause the video. Okay, so we're going to review what happens when a person gets high. So I did not write it on here, but the chemical compound in marijuana that gets people, quote, high is called THC. And that chemical can have different effects on the brain. So I'm going to go over 4 different effects here on this slide, but there are more. So one thing that can happen to a person when ingesting THC and it enters the brain is it can affect the hypothalamus. And this is the part of the brain that controls our hunger and thirst. So when people are, quote, high, they might experience an increased appetite, otherwise known as the munchies. Another thing that can happen when a user ingests THC goes on in the hippocampus. And this is a part of the brain that deals with memory, specifically short-term memory. So when THC enters the brain, a person might experience the inability to remember things, maybe from 5 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago, a couple hours ago. The memory is slightly impaired. Another thing that happens when THC enters the brain is dopamine is released all over the brain. And this causes users to experience euphoria, so lots of happiness, and relaxation. And this takes place all over the brain. And then finally, another part of the brain we've learned about is the amygdala. That's the fight or flight region of the brain, right? It controls what happens when we feel scared or we think there's a threat. And if a person is using marijuana and THC enters their brain, they could experience increased anxiety and maybe some paranoia. So the, quote, feeling like paranoid, that happens in the amygdala. So these are just 4 examples. Today we're going to continue to build on this understanding of what happens in the brain or the effects on the brain when marijuana is used. Okay, like I said, this is our learning target for this week. We're going to be able to explain the impact of marijuana on the teen and adult brain. So today, you're going to be looking at 3 different factors that influence how the brain is affected by marijuana. So you're going to get to pick today what you want to research. There are 3 different readings. So you can choose to read about how age affects how marijuana impacts a person. So looking at teen marijuana use versus when adults use and the effects on the brain. You can choose to read about how often a person uses and the effects on the brain. So how does the brain change if a person uses frequently, like every day, versus just occasionally, like once a month? And then finally, you could choose to read about how much marijuana a person uses or ingests. So that is comparing how do edibles affect the brain versus smoking affect the brain. So your job today is to pick one of these topics. You are going to read about these factors. Record important details on your Google document. Then you're going to make a chart. This could be on any separate sheet of paper or on a Google Doc if you want. And that's going to compare the 2 factors you read about. So here's my really pretty example. This is also on your Google Doc. You're going to split your paper in half. So I chose the reading how often. So I'm going to compare what effects there are if somebody uses every day versus occasionally. So I'm going to write down what are 3 things that might happen to the brain if a person uses every day. What are 3 things that might happen if a person uses occasionally? And I'm going to include a pretty picture. This is like the ugliest thing I've ever drawn. It was supposed to be a marijuana leaf. Your drawing is going to look better than mine. And the goal of this is to teach your classmates about what you read about. So you're only going to pick one of these, right? So if I read about how often people use, I still want to learn about how much. Like, what about edibles and smoking? I want to learn about that still. So I can go back and I can look at my classmates' charts, and that's going to help me learn more about how marijuana affects the brain. So today there are science office hours at 1 p.m. and 2 p.m. At 1 p.m., you can come if you feel confused about this assignment and you feel like you need help on anything science related. I can help answer questions. You can come at 2 p.m. if you understand stuff, but you feel like you want to push your thinking. So you can find these meeting links on Google Classroom. In office hours, we're going to review key info. We're going to answer questions about the assignment, and we might play some games or do some activities to learn more about how marijuana impacts the brain. I hope to see you there. Again, this is your assignment, and you can get started on the next section of your Google Doc. If you got questions, please reach out to me. Thank you. Bye-bye.